The waiting is over. Assetto Corsa Competizione's version 1.9 update has finally dropped for PC players, offering fans of Kunos Simulazione's GT3 simulator a chance to drive 3 fresh GT3 cars on a brand new track. But the extra content is only half the story, as Aris Vasilikos, head of vehicle and handling R&D at Kunos, has outlined the numerous changes made to the game's tyre and suspension model, designed to eliminate the possibility of unrealistic setups, the infamous toe hack for example, being much faster than organically produced baselines. In this video, we outline what Kunos has changed in version 1.9 of Assetto Corsa Competizione, why it has been changed, and whether we think the Italian studio has achieved its goals. We also examine the new content, including 3 new cars: the Ferrari 296 GT3, the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo2, and the Porsche 911 GT3 R 992, and one track as well, the Circuito Ricardo Tormo. Kunos has gone to great lengths to improve ACC's tyre behaviour in version 1.9. The team is focused on improving the way tyres respond to high or low pressure settings, with negative consequences more prominent when choosing extreme esports settings. As well as expanding and altering the optimum tyre pressure range to between 26 and 27 psi, Kunos has tidied up how to extract the best grip from the pressure range. Lower optimal values, 26.0 to 26.3 psi thereabouts, will create more tyre flex, providing better cornering feel and grip in slower turns. Higher optimal values, between 26.7 and 27.0, will reduce tyre flex, allowing the tyre to maintain cornering stability under high-speed load. Put simply, lower pressures will be better for slower tracks, and higher pressures are better optimised for tracks with fast corners. As ever, finding a balance is key to maximising lap times across a stint. Heat generation across the tyre has also been altered, with too hot outside or inside temperatures resulting in decreased grip. This wasn't always the case pre-version 1.9, when maximum negative toe settings across the front axle would provide great turn-in and grip, with less of the negative effects one would expect in such an extreme setup. Kunos hoped to change this with version 1.9, prompting esports players to use more believable settings to achieve fast lap times. Ideally, the temperature spread between the inside and outside of the tyre should be kept to less than 15 degrees Celsius for optimal grip. Sudden spikes in tyre temperature, caused by sliding for example, will also not overheat the core tyre temperature as quickly as in version 1.8, where a spin would essentially ruin your tyres for the rest of a stint. Very welcome news for the majority of ACC players then. If you're watching the footage of this video and thinking the tyre widget doesn't match up to your expectations, that's because this is an early version. This has now been fixed for the release. Bump stop modelling has also received an overhaul. In previous versions of ACC, the bump stops could run with an infinite amount of travel, meaning players could run with softer springs, better for mechanical grip and lowers ride height under aerodynamic load, without all the negative knock-on effects. Now, bump stops have a maximum range of 20 to 30mm, forcing players to run stiffer springs at high-speed tracks and work on optimising damper bump and rebound settings. Before we evaluate the tyre and suspension model in ACC, let's take a look at the new cars and track introduced in the update. Famous for hosting MotoGP racing since 1999, Circuito Ricardo Tormo, better known as Valencia, has played host to Formula 1 testing, Formula E, and DTM, with the NASN F1 Academy visiting the Spanish venue later this year. Being completely new to Valencia, unless a few GTR2 or Race 07 laps 13 years ago counts, my first few laps were filled with mild disappointment. The second gear hairpins and late apex turns felt frustrating to negotiate and rhythm breaking. However, after 10 laps or so, your inputs move into step with that rhythm, with each section of the track linking together beautifully. Turn 1 is a 100mph plus test of bravery. It's all too easy to run wide and invalidate your lap. The runoff area is generous, however. The uphill right-hander of Curva Champi Herreros is another corner requiring stern focus, as it leads to a medium-length sprint up to the final bend. Its exit also consists of vertiginous curbing, testing version 1.9's latest suspension updates to the very maximum. There are handily placed white marks dotted around the course too, operating as perfect braking markers, especially considering Valencia's lack of landmarks, although the blind turn 5 requires a bit of experience and feel to get right. Surprisingly, for such a flat-looking track, Valencia boasts some subtly cambered curves. This forces you to use the track's elevation to pivot and fire the car out of the turns. It's a delight when you get it right. Watch out for the pit exit though, it directs cars straight onto the racing line. Ugh. In terms of overtaking points, the 800-metre long front straight is an obvious place to slipstream past opponents, with a dive down the inside into the tight turn 2 also possible after piling on the pressure through turn 1. With many corners featuring just one obvious racing line, overtaking may be at a premium, but thanks to a few wide open hairpins, dive bombing could be a valid overtaking strategy. You have been warned. Overall then, Valencia is a track that should grow on the majority of ACC players. The first and last sections of the track are good fun to master, with a slightly fiddly second sector perhaps taking the shine off. You can't argue with the way it's been represented in game, however, with all the track details present and correct, including a huge mural of Valentino Rossi. I'm sure he'll love seeing that when he visits the track for round 8 of the GT World Challenge Sprint Cup on the 18th of September. New to GT World Challenge series across the globe, Ferrari's 296 GT3 is Maranello's replacement for the venerable 488 GT3 Evo. Being mid-engined, the car boasts excellent weight distribution and has been designed with downforce in mind, resulting in slower top speeds than the 488, with comparable setups. Around Valencia, the car instantly feels stable and refreshingly able to handle the larger curbs with zero issues, a pleasant change from the 488 in version 1.8. One large negative point, however, is the way it sounds. The 296's turbocharged V6 motor produces a less sonorous cockpit tone than the previous generations of GT3 Ferraris, from the naturally aspirated 458 backwards, which is a little disappointing given we've had to endure the 488's flat-sounding V8 throughout ACC's history. It's not Kunos's fault, however. The developers are mimicking the real car. You may even enjoy the sound. It's a subjective thing after all. The occasional turbo chatter isn't enough to redeem its exhaust note, sadly, but externally, the car sounds sweet enough, if a little on the quiet side. Thankfully, it looks aggressive and is the quickest of the 3 DLC cars around Valencia. Compared to the Ferrari, the Porsche felt more understeery from the off, which is understandable given its rear-engine layout. 911s generally require the front tyres to be loaded up fully for the front end to bite properly. Once the intricacies of the Porsche's unique handling have been mastered, the Porsche feels extremely forgiving, with the rearwards weight bias enhancing its propulsion off Valencia's numerous tight bends. Stuttgart's finest also feels more forgiving than the Ferrari on the aggressive preset setup, but after a little tweaking doesn't quite attain the same lap times as the prancing horse, being around 1 to 2/10 of a second off with 62 litres of fuel on board. In terms of sound, the 992 flavoured Porsche sounds rampant compared to the Ferrari, with an extra zing as it hits the upper echelons of 8,000 RPM. Tonally, it's different to the 991.2, but still recognisably a free-revving flat 6. Nice. The Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo2 enters the fray in ACC with a unique new setup option, engine brake maps. Although still a work in progress, the car's engine brake maps can be changed via the standard ACC ECU map selector. For a quick guide on the new engine brake map option, check out our companion article where we outline what engine brake maps are, what they do, and their possible functions in ACC. Link in the description. In terms of styling, the Huracan GT3 Evo2 is based on the road-going STO model, looking and sounding brutish. Honestly, it deserves an ASBO. The trademark V10 engine is the sweetest of the 3 cars in my opinion, albeit sounding exactly the same as previous generations of Lambo, and the Audi R8 for that matter. As expected, it feels very similar to its predecessors, including the Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2 from the Challengers Pack DLC, but more effort is required to produce similar lap times to the Ferrari and the Porsche. The car has been designed with more aero performance in mind, coming at the cost of higher drag, theoretically leading to lower top speeds than its predecessors. After a little fettling of the setup, I could more or less match the Porsche in terms of pace, but the Ferrari was still 2/10 out of reach. The Lamborghini is extremely stable however, and consistently quick laps were achievable. As well as 3 new cars, the Mercedes AMG GT3 Evo has undergone significant updates in version 1.9, including increased downforce thanks to more efficient aerodynamics. We've written a short article outlining some of the alterations already, so check it out if you want to find out more about how the car's performance has been upgraded. Essentially, it's more of the same, a very stable platform with plenty of traction and V8 grunt. My first port of call when testing version 1.9 of ACC was to explore the most extreme setup options, mainly the infamous negative toe hack, where setting extreme toe values garnered huge time gains with less of the negative consequences. The good news is that when I tried it in version 1.9, the lap time gains were minimal. It's clear from initial testing that Kunos has worked hard to update its tyre model to ensure more realism than before. The way tyres can now undergo a heat cycle, after a spin for example, and gradually return to a constant core temperature is impressive, all the more so given this would destroy tyre performance in version 1.8. Speaking from several bitter personal experiences in SRO esports last year. Expanding the window of optimal tyre performance to 1 psi between 26 and 27 is a good move too, making the game more accessible for players uninterested in detailed setup. Even outside these parameters, grip doesn't suddenly disappear, meaning a slight miscalculation in setup won't spell disaster for your race, which is great if you just want to start the game and drive. But perhaps the most noticeable element of version 1.9 is the suspension and bump stop improvements, making cars like the McLaren 720S GT3 and Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo, normally recalcitrant over curbing like the Variante Alta Chicane at Imola, much more pliant. In previous versions of ACC, hard suspension hits would often lead to bouncing, making the car lose control. This was a scenario that could occur with the old infinite travel bump stops, but thankfully is much improved. However, don't expect to hit the Zolder chicane at 100 mph and continue on your merry way. Suspension is more forgiving, but not that forgiving. The new content is also high quality. Although most fans would struggle to identify the Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo2 and the 992 version of the Porsche as all new cars, because they are, the ACC unveiling of the Ferrari 296 arrives impressively close to the car's real-world debut, 24 Hours of Daytona across the 28th and 29th of January this year, enhancing its fan appeal in ACC. I mean, who doesn't want to drive a brand new Ferrari? All three cars are close in performance too, with the Ferrari enjoying a 0.1 or 0.2 second advantage over the Porsche at Valencia. The Lamborghini is able to match it with setup work, but is trickier to extract pace from initially. The track itself is a strong addition to ACC too, featuring all the attention to detail you'd expect from Kunos, although in terms of racing, it remains to be seen whether the track can provide a lot of overtaking. Nevertheless, it's a solid challenge and has a nice flow in GT3 machinery. But the star of the version 1.9 show is undoubtedly ACC's improved tyre and suspension model. Nearly 4 years on from release, ACC continues to enhance its immersive GT3 racing reputation. Is version 1.9 the most important update for ACC? If you value having the ultimate driving experience, then yes. So, are you looking forward to the version 1.9 update, and will you be picking up the new DLC? For all the information, make sure you keep an eye on the TraxionGG website, and also keep an eye on the YouTube channel because we're going to have a track guide very soon with setups for all three cars. Hopefully you guys will enjoy that and find it very useful. Until next time, thanks for watching, keep it pinned, and have a great day.